General Bradley laughed. Women can't fly fighter jets. But 20 minutes later, when he discovered who was piloting the F-22 that shot down enemy jets one by one, his face turned completely white. Meet Amanda Ghost Collins, 28 years old, brown hair always pulled back in a simple ponytail, green eyes that seemed to notice everything while revealing nothing. For 3 years, she had worked at Nellis Air Force Base in Nevada as an administrative assistant. Every morning at 0600 hours, she arrived with coffee for the pilots, filed paperwork, answered phones, and cleaned the briefing rooms. The fighter pilots barely acknowledged her existence. To them, she was just another civilian contractor, invisible background noise in their high-stakes world of supersonic aircraft and aerial combat. But what none of them knew was that Amanda Collins had been born into aviation royalty. Her father, Colonel James Phantom Collins, had been one of the most decorated F-22 Raptor pilots in U.S. Air Force history. Before his death in a classified mission over Syria 5 years ago, he had secretly trained his daughter in everything from basic aerodynamics to advanced combat maneuvers. Every weekend of her childhood had been spent at private airfields, learning to fly everything from Cessnas to military trainers. The irony was crushing. While testosterone-fueled pilots joked about women being too emotional for combat flying, Amanda possessed more actual flight hours in military aircraft than half the squadron. Her father had used his connections to get her unofficial training time in F-16s and even a few precious hours in the F-22 Raptor itself. But when she applied for Air Force pilot training after college, she was rejected. Not for lack of skill, but because of her father's classified mission status and the political complications that surrounded his death. So she took the only job available at Nellis, serving coffee to the same pilots who should have been her colleagues. General Charles Bradley was the worst of them all. At 52 years old, with silver hair and a chest full of medals, he commanded the 422nd Fighter Squadron with an iron fist and old-school attitudes that belonged in the 1950s. Bradley had built his career on the belief that fighter aviation was a man's world, period. He'd blocked female pilot applications, made disparaging comments about women in combat roles, and proudly displayed a sign in his office that read, "Real pilots don't need GPS, they navigate by instinct." Every morning when Amanda brought his coffee, Bradley would barely look up from his mission briefs. If he acknowledged her at all, it was usually with some condescending comment about women being naturally suited for support roles. Amanda endured it all in silence, knowing that arguing would only confirm his biases. Have you ever been overlooked simply because of who people assumed you were, not who you actually were? Drop a comment below if you've ever had to prove yourself against impossible expectations. The morning of November 15th started like any other. Amanda arrived at 0600 with coffee and donuts for the morning briefing. The squadron was preparing for a routine training exercise, aerial combat maneuvers against simulated enemy aircraft. As she distributed coffee, she heard the familiar banter between pilots, the casual confidence of men who controlled the most advanced fighter jets on Earth. "Weather's perfect for flying today," said Captain Reynolds, accepting his coffee without looking at her. "Should be easy hunting against those Navy boys." "They won't know what hit them," laughed Lieutenant Commander Foster. "F-22s versus FA-18, it's not even fair." General Bradley stood at the front of the briefing room, pointing at a tactical display showing the Nevada Desert Training Area. "Gentlemen, today's exercise simulates a defensive scenario. Enemy aircraft will attempt to penetrate our airspace and strike strategic targets. Our job is to intercept and neutralize them before they reach the protected zone." As he spoke, Amanda continued her invisible work, refilling coffee cups and collecting empty plates. But her trained ears were absorbing every detail of the mission parameters, aircraft positions, and tactical considerations. Her father had taught her to think like a pilot, even when she couldn't fly like one. "The exercise begins at 1000 hours, Bradley continued. "We'll have 6 F-22s airborne, plus ground-based radar support. Should be a textbook interception." That's when the alarm started screaming. Red lights flashed throughout the base as the emergency klaxon echoed across every building. The briefing room erupted into chaos as pilots grabbed their gear and ran toward the flight line. But this wasn't the scheduled exercise alarm. This was real. "All personnel, this is not a drill." The base commander's voice crackled over the intercom. "We have multiple bogies approaching from the southeast. Estimated time to base, 15 minutes. All pilots to aircraft immediately." Amanda stood frozen in the corner, holding a coffee pot, as trained warriors transformed into a coordinated military response. Through the briefing room windows, she could see ground crews scrambling to prepare aircraft, fuel trucks racing across the tarmac, and security teams taking defensive positions. But something was wrong. Terribly wrong. Captain Reynolds grabbed his helmet and started running, then suddenly stumbled and collapsed. Food poisoning from last night's dinner had hit him like a freight train. Lieutenant Foster made it halfway to his aircraft before doubling over in agony, the same contaminated meal striking again. One by one, pilots who had eaten at the same off-base restaurant were dropping out of the mission. Within minutes, the squadron was down to 3 operational pilots for 6 F-22 Raptors. General Bradley's face had gone from confident to panicked as he realized the scope of the crisis. Enemy aircraft were approaching one of the most sensitive military installations in the United States, and he had half the defensive capability he needed. "Sir," said Master Sergeant Thompson, the flight line chief, "we've got 3 birds ready to launch, but we need at least 5 to establish proper coverage. The bogies are coming in from multiple vectors." Bradley stared at the tactical display, watching red dots representing enemy aircraft getting closer to American airspace. His career, his base, and potentially national security hung in the balance. That's when he made the comment that would haunt him forever. "Where are we supposed to find more pilots?" he shouted in frustration. "It's not like we can just grab someone off the street. Women can't fly fighter jets. This isn't some video game." The briefing room fell silent except for the continuing alarm. Amanda stood in the corner, still holding the coffee pot, watching the most powerful military leader on the base have a complete meltdown. That's when she made a decision that would change everything. She set down the coffee pot and walked calmly to the front of the room. "General Bradley," she said quietly, her voice cutting through the chaos like a blade, "I can fly." Bradley turned to look at her as if she had just suggested they paint the F-22s pink. "Excuse me." "I said I can fly, sir. F-22 Raptor. I'm qualified." The room erupted in nervous laughter. Even in the middle of a national security crisis, the idea of the coffee girl claiming she could pilot the most advanced fighter jet in the world seemed absurd. "Ma'am," Bradley said with barely controlled condescension, "this isn't Microsoft Flight Simulator. These are real aircraft worth $150 million each. Maybe you should—" "Colonel James Collins was my father," Amanda interrupted, her voice steady as steel. "Call sign Phantom. 3 tours in Iraq, 2 in Afghanistan, 47 confirmed air-to-air kills. He trained me personally on F-16s and F-22s from age 16 to 23. I have 847 hours of actual flight time in military aircraft." The laughter stopped. Master Sergeant Thompson stepped forward, his face suddenly serious. "Ma'am, did you say James Collins? Phantom Collins?" "Yes, Sergeant." Thompson turned to Bradley with wide eyes. "Sir, Phantom Collins was a legend. If she's his daughter and if she actually has F-22 time—" "This is insane," Bradley exploded. "She's a civilian contractor. She brings us coffee. I don't care who her father was. I'm not putting an untrained—" "Sir," interrupted the radar operator, "bogies are now 10 minutes out, descending through 30,000 feet. We need birds in the air now." Amanda walked to the equipment locker and began pulling out a flight suit. "General, you have a choice. You can let ego cost American lives, or you can let me prove what my father taught me." As she suited up with practiced efficiency, Bradley watched in stunned silence. Her movements were fluid, professional, exactly like every qualified pilot he'd ever seen preparing for flight. But his pride, his prejudices, and his career-long beliefs fought against accepting what he was seeing. "I could court-martial you for even suggesting this," he said weakly. You could, Amanda replied, zipping up the flight suit that fit her perfectly. But in 8 minutes, enemy aircraft are going to penetrate American airspace. Your choice, sir. Have you ever watched someone's entire worldview collapse in real time? Share this story if you believe talent doesn't ask permission, it just performs when needed. The walk to the flight line felt like a movie scene in slow motion. Amanda strode across the tarmac in her flight suit, helmet under her arm, while every ground crew member, mechanic, and pilot stared in disbelief. The coffee girl was walking toward a $150 million F-22 Raptor, like she owned it. Master Sergeant Thompson had made the decision for Bradley. Ma'am, you're taking aircraft 074143. She's fueled, armed, and ready. Your call sign for this mission is Ghost Falcon. As Amanda approached the F-22, the sleek gray aircraft seemed to recognize her. This wasn't her first time in a Raptor cockpit. Her father had somehow arranged training flights that were supposed to be impossible for civilians. Every switch, every display, every system was exactly where muscle memory expected it to be. The ground crew chief, Staff Sergeant Clark, approached cautiously. Ma'am, I need to ask, do you actually know how to start this thing? Amanda looked at him with the same calm expression she'd worn while serving coffee. Sergeant, I could start this aircraft blindfolded. The question is whether your general has the courage to let me save his base. As she climbed the ladder to the cockpit, the radar operator's voice echoed across the flight line. All aircraft, bogies now 7 minutes out, multiple contacts bearing 135 degrees southeast. Amanda settled into the pilot seat like she was coming home. Her hands moved automatically through the startup sequence. Master power on, engine start sequence initiated, avionics systems online. The twin Pratt and Whitney engines spooled up with their characteristic whine, and the most advanced fighter jet in the world came alive under her control. In the tower, General Bradley watched through binoculars as the impossible unfolded before his eyes. The woman who had been invisible to him for 3 years was performing aircraft startup procedures with the precision of a seasoned combat pilot. Sir, said the air traffic controller, Ghost Falcon is requesting immediate takeoff clearance. Bradley grabbed the radio microphone with shaking hands. This decision would either save the base or end his career. Ghost Falcon, this is Tower. You are cleared for immediate takeoff. God help us all. Amanda's voice came back through the radio, calm and professional. Tower, Ghost Falcon rolling. Time to see what Dad taught me. The F-22 Raptor accelerated down the runway like a silver bullet. At 180 knots, Amanda pulled back on the stick, and the aircraft leaped into the Nevada sky with supernatural grace. In the tower, experienced pilots watched in silence as the coffee girl executed a takeoff that was textbook perfect. All aircraft, this is Ghost Falcon, Amanda's voice crackled through the radio. I'm climbing to 40,000 feet, heading southeast to intercept. Let's show these visitors they picked the wrong airspace. At 35,000 feet, Amanda's radar picked up the incoming aircraft. 6 bogies and 2 flights of 3, approaching at high speed. But something was wrong with their signatures. These weren't the Navy FA-18s scheduled for the training exercise. These aircraft had characteristics that matched no friendly fighter in the American inventory. Tower, Ghost Falcon. I'm showing 6 unknown aircraft, estimated distance 50 miles and closing. These are not Navy birds. Repeat, these are not friendlies. Bradley's blood ran cold. The training exercise had been canceled due to the pilot shortage, but someone hadn't gotten the message, or someone was using the scheduled exercise as cover for something much more sinister. Ghost Falcon, Tower. Can you identify aircraft type? Amanda adjusted her radar settings, using techniques her father had taught her for analyzing unknown contacts. Tower. Radar signature suggests modified fighter aircraft, possibly foreign manufacture. They're flying in combat formation and maintaining radio silence. Recommend treating as hostile. The next few minutes would determine whether Amanda Collins was really her father's daughter or just a coffee girl with delusions of grandeur. 6 enemy aircraft against 1 F-22 Raptor piloted by someone the world thought couldn't fly. But in the cockpit of aircraft 074143, Amanda Collins smiled for the first time in 3 years. Her father's voice whispered in her memory, "When the moment comes, sweetheart, show them what a real pilot looks like." All stations, this is Ghost Falcon, engaging hostile aircraft. Time to earn my call sign. The first enemy aircraft never saw her coming. Amanda had climbed to 45,000 feet, using the F-22's stealth characteristics to remain invisible until the perfect moment. When she dove from the sun, her first AEM-120 missile was in the air before the enemy pilot even knew he was being hunted. Fox 3, she called, using the standard terminology for missile launch. Splash 1. The first enemy aircraft disintegrated in a ball of fire and debris. The remaining 5 scattered, finally realizing they were facing something far more dangerous than they had anticipated. In the tower, General Bradley watched the radar display in stunned silence as one red dot vanished from the screen. The coffee girl had just scored her first air-to-air kill. "Holy shit," whispered Captain Morgan, one of the healthy pilots. "She actually did it." But Amanda wasn't finished. The enemy aircraft were regrouping, trying to use their numerical advantage to overwhelm her. They had made a critical mistake. They thought they were fighting one desperate pilot in a single aircraft. They had no idea they were facing the daughter of Phantom Collins, trained from childhood to think like a predator in 3-dimensional space. Amanda pulled the F-22 into a vertical climb that would have grayed out most pilots, then rolled inverted and dove toward the second group of enemy aircraft. Her maneuvers were so aggressive, so precisely calculated, that even experienced pilots watching from the ground couldn't believe what they were seeing. "Ghost Falcon, you have 2 bogeys coming up from your 6, called the radar operator. "Copy, Tower, I see them. Dad always said the best defense is making the other guy too dead to shoot." She pulled a maneuver that shouldn't have been possible, a high G-turn that brought her around behind the pursuing aircraft in seconds. Her second missile launch came so quickly that the enemy pilots didn't have time to react. Fox 3. Splash 2. Bradley was now standing at the tower window, watching the impossible air battle unfold in the distance. Contrails traced through the sky like deadly ballet as Amanda outfought and outflew 6 enemy aircraft simultaneously. "Sir," said Master Sergeant Thompson quietly, "I've never seen anything like this. She's flying like her father," Bradley finished, his voice barely a whisper. The third and fourth kills came within 30 seconds of each other. Amanda had split the remaining enemy formation, forcing them to choose between protecting themselves and completing their mission. When they chose self-preservation, she picked them off one by one with the cold precision of a trained killer. Ghost Falcon, Tower, outstanding work. RTB when ready. Negative, Tower. Still have 2 bogeys heading for the base. This isn't over yet. The final 2 enemy aircraft were making a desperate run toward Nellis, probably hoping to cause damage before being destroyed. But they had made a fatal error. They were flying straight and level, focused on their target instead of the predator hunting them. Amanda dropped to low altitude and came up behind them like a ghost. Her final 2 missiles launched simultaneously, tracking toward targets that never saw death approaching. Fox 3, Splash 5 and 6, all bogeys destroyed. The radio crackled with silence for a long moment. Then, Master Sergeant Thompson's voice came through, filled with awe. "Ghost Falcon, Tower, outstanding work. Base is secure. Request you return for landing." "Copy, Tower. Ghost Falcon inbound. And Tower?" "Yes, ma'am. Tell the General his coffee's getting cold." 20 minutes later, Amanda taxied the F-22 to a stop on the flight line. As she shut down the engines and opened the canopy, she found herself surrounded by every pilot, ground crew member, and base personnel who could make it to the tarmac. They stood in absolute silence, staring at the woman who had just single-handedly saved an entire Air Force base. General Bradley walked slowly through the crowd, his face pale and his hands shaking. When he reached the aircraft, he looked up at Amanda sitting in the cockpit and slowly removed his cap. Then, for the first time in his 30-year military career, General Charles Bradley saluted someone who outranked him not in authority, but in pure skill and courage. "Ma'am," he said, his voice carrying across the silent flight line. I owe you an apology. I owe this base an apology. And I owe the memory of your father the respect I should have shown from the beginning. Amanda climbed down from the cockpit, removing her helmet to reveal hair damp with sweat and eyes bright with the adrenaline of combat. General, all I ever wanted was the chance to serve, just like my father taught me. Bradley looked at her for a long moment, then turned to address the crowd of personnel surrounding them. Ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce you to Captain Amanda Collins. Effective immediately, she's the newest pilot in the 422nd Fighter Squadron. The crowd erupted in cheers, but Amanda held up her hand for silence. Sir, I appreciate the offer, but I need to know something first. Will you judge me by my performance in that cockpit, or by the assumptions you made while I was serving coffee? Bradley's answer would echo through military aviation circles for years to come. Captain Collins, after what I just witnessed, I'll judge you the same way your father would have wanted, as one of the finest pilots I've ever seen. 3 months later, Amanda Collins was promoted to flight instructor, specializing in air-to-air combat tactics. The sign in General Bradley's office that had read, "Real pilots don't need GPS," was replaced with a new one. Real pilots prove themselves in the sky, not in the briefing room. And every morning at 0600, when new pilots arrived for training, they found their coffee waiting for them, served by combat veterans who understood that respect is earned through action, not assumption. Have you ever witnessed someone shatter expectations so completely that it changed everyone around them? Share this story because somewhere, someone is still being underestimated simply because others can't see past their own prejudices. Amanda never forgot the moment when General Bradley's face turned white with the realization that the coffee girl was actually the most skilled pilot on his base. Sometimes the people we overlook the most are the ones capable of saving us all. If you believe that talent doesn't announce itself, it just performs when the moment demands it, then this story is for you. Because in a world quick to judge and slow to see, Amanda Collins proved that heroes often come disguised